I'm Izzy Wrenwood, but to those who know me, I'm just Izzy. My life has been a relentless climb, every step taken for Thane Carver, the boy who's been my heart's compass since the day he was born. As a single mother, I carved out a living through endless night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, where the hum of monitors and the sting of antiseptic became my second home. I counted coins for Thane's basketball sneakers, skipped dinners to cover his school fees, and patched his dreams together with every extra hour I could work. Each sacrifice was a brick in the life I built for him. My love poured into every moment, his first wobbly steps, his gap-toothed grin at graduation, the way he'd hug me tight and call me Mama. Thane was my world, and I was his foundation. When he called me one chilly autumn night, voice brimming with joy, to say he was marrying Aurelia Voss, my heart swelled with a vision of the future. I saw myself standing beside him at the altar, his eyes meeting mine with gratitude for all I'd given. This wedding, I thought, would be our shared triumph, a day to celebrate not just his love, but the years I'd fought for his happiness. I threw myself into making it perfect, emptying my savings without a second thought. Orchids from Holland, their petals soft as whispers, would grace every table. A jazz trio from Chicago, their melodies rich with soul, was booked to serenade the guests. The open bar would sparkle with custom cocktails, each named for a milestone in Thane and Aurelia's romance, starlit proposal and first dance glow. I chose a dress of emerald silk, its fabric cool against my skin, and spent hours at the salon, my hair swept into curls that felt like a crown. This was my moment too, I told myself, a chance to be seen as the mother who'd given everything. But that dream crumbled the moment I stepped into the venue, a restored barn aglow with chandeliers and fragrant blooms. I expected a place of honor, a seat beside my son. Instead, Aurelia's smile, sharp and fleeting, met me at the door, and I sensed a shadow in her eyes. The day I'd poured my heart into, the day I thought would bind me closer to Thane, was about to unravel. I didn't yet know how deeply it would cut, but as I stood there, clutching my purse, a quiet ache began to bloom. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a stage, and I was about to learn my role wasn't what I'd imagined. If you're listening to my story right now, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear from you. Let's stay connected, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I truly recommend it so you never miss another story about love, family, and the bonds that shape our homes. Every single subscription is not just support, it's encouragement for us to keep sharing more heartfelt stories with you every day. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep growing this family together. The barn's golden glow felt like a cruel mirage as I stood at the entrance, my emerald silk dress catching the light of 1,000 tiny chandeliers. I'd imagined this moment for months, walking arm in arm with Thane, my son, the boy I'd raised through sweat and sleepless nights, as guests smiled and nodded in recognition of all I'd done. But Aurelia Voss, radiant in her lace gown, met me with a smile that cut like a shard of glass. "Izzy," she said, her voice honeyed but hollow, "we've got a special spot for you." Before I could respond, she guided me through the crowd, past tables draped in ivory linens and fragrant with Dutch orchids I'd paid for, to a swinging door at the back of the venue. It opened to the kitchen, a chaotic world of clanging pots and hissing steam, where the air reeked of burnt oil and garlic. There, tucked against a wall beside a stack of greasy trays, was a folding chair, its metal frame dented, a crumpled napkin slung across it like a discarded flag. My place. Not at the head table, not among the guests sipping champagne, but here, exiled to the margins of my son's wedding. I froze, my heart thudding as the truth sank in. Aurelia's eyes flickered with something, triumph perhaps, before she turned back to the glittering reception. I looked for Thane, hoping to catch his gaze, to see a hint of protest, but he was laughing with Marigold Voss, Aurelia's mother, adjusting his cufflinks as if I didn't exist. The boy I'd rocked through fevers, whose dreams I'd stitched together with double shifts, had left me here, invisible. I sat, my dress brushing the sticky floor, the heat of the ovens pressing against my back. Each clink of glass from the reception hall felt like a needle in my chest. I tried to swallow the hurt, to tell myself it was a mistake, that this was still Thane's day. But then, through the swinging door's narrow crack, I overheard two bridesmaids, their voices sharp with glee. Izzy paid for everything, the flowers, the band, even this champagne, one giggled. But Aurelia said she's just a walking wallet. No one wants her in the photos, ruining the vibe. The words seared me, each syllable a spark igniting a fire I'd kept buried too long. My hands trembled as I clutched my purse, the one Thane gave me for Mother's Day years ago, back when he still called me Mama. I wanted to storm out to demand answers, but I stayed silent, my jaw clenched so tight it pulsed behind my eyes. Then came the final blow. Checking my phone to steady myself, I noticed a notification from my bank. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through the transactions. A $2,000 charge for a rooftop bar crawl, another for a spa day with Aurelia's bridal party, manicures, facials, the works. All on my credit card without a word of permission. A Venmo note from Aurelia to her maid of honor flashed on my screen. Thane's mom's got it covered. Go big. My vision blurred, not with tears but with a rage so fierce it felt like it could burn the barn down. They hadn't just sidelined me, they'd used me, mocked me, erased me from the story I'd funded. The laughter from the reception, Marigold's syrupy toast, Thane's deep chuckle echoed through the door, each sound a reminder of my exile. I sat there, the cold metal of the chair biting into my thighs, and felt something shift inside me. Not despair, not yet. It was the first flicker of defiance, a spark that would soon become a blaze. Kitchen's stifling air clung to me like a second skin, the stench of burnt oil and garlic mingling with the faint jasmine of my perfume, now sour with betrayal. Through the swinging door, I glimpsed the reception hall aglow with chandeliers, the clink of champagne flutes, and Thane's laughter, my son, radiant in his tailored suit, oblivious to my exile. The bridesmaids' cruel words, a walking wallet, and the sting of Aurelia's unauthorized charges on my credit card burned in my chest. I sat on that rusted folding chair, my emerald silk dress creased, my heart a tangle of grief and rage. I'd given everything, every late shift, every skipped meal, every dollar for this day, yet here I was, erased from it. But something inside me snapped, not with despair, but with a clarity as sharp as a blade. I was done being their shadow. I stood, my heels clicking on the sticky linoleum, and slipped out the side door into the cool night. Parking lot was silent, save for the distant hum of the reception's jazz band, their saxophone weaving through the air like a taunt. Under a sliver of moon, the autumn wind bit at my bare arms, but it felt like freedom. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite the fire in my veins. 3 calls. That's all it would take. The first was to the florist, a woman I'd spent months coordinating with for the brunch bouquets. Cancel tomorrow's delivery, I said, my voice calm but unyielding. No further payments will be made. She stammered, confused, but I hung up before she could ask why. The second call went to the band's manager. We won't need the second set tonight or tomorrow. Consider the contract closed. The third was to the bar vendor. Shut down the open bar after the first shift. No additional funds. Each word was a stone dropped into a still pond, ripples already forming in my mind. I stepped back inside, unnoticed, and lingered in the kitchen's shadows. Chaos began to unfold like a slow-burning fuse. The band's music stopped mid-song, replaced by the rustle of confused guests. Servers scurried, whispering about the bar closing early, bottles of top-shelf bourbon left untouched. Through the door's crack, I saw Aurelia's face drain of color, her lace gown catching the light as she spun toward the bar, her voice sharp with panic. What do you mean it's closed? We paid for midnight. Thane stood frozen, his smile fading as guests murmured, their champagne flutes empty. Marigold, Aurelia's mother, clutched her pearls, her syrupy charm replaced by a scowl. Perfect fairy tale I'd funded was unraveling, and I felt no guilt, only the first pulse of power I hadn't known in years. Back in my hotel room, the silence was deafening, the rose-scented lotion on the nightstand a mockery of the night's bitterness. I couldn't sleep, my mind replaying the kitchen, the bridesmaids' laughter, Thane's indifference. My phone buzzed with notifications, missed calls from Thane, a frantic text from Aurelia. What's going on? The band left. I ignored them. Instead, I opened my banking app, staring at the transactions. $2,000 for Aurelia's bar crawl, $1,500 for her spa day. My sacrifice reduced to their indulgence. That's when I decided they needed to see it. I pulled out the check I'd written for the venue, a crisp $15,000, my signature bold at the bottom. I snapped a photo, blurred the account number, and posted it on Facebook with a caption that cut like a knife. I paid for their fairy tale, but not to be erased. No explanation, no apology, just the truth, raw and undeniable. By morning, my post had exploded. Notifications flooded in. 200 likes, 87 comments, shares from old friends, hospital colleagues, even strangers. "Izzy, this breaks my heart," wrote a nurse I hadn't seen in years. "You deserved better," said a neighbor. My cousin Juniper texted, "What happened?" Everyone's freaking out. But the messages from Thane and Aurelia were different, defensive, accusatory. "Mom, why would you do this?" Thane wrote, "You're embarrassing us." Aurelia's was colder. "This is petty, Izzy." But we had a vision. Petty? The word stung, but it fueled me. They thought I was invisible, a prop to be tucked away. They didn't know I'd just rewritten their script. The brunch would have no flowers, the music was gone, the bar dry. Let them feel the absence. Let them choke on the silence of my withdrawal. I wasn't the woman in the kitchen anymore. I was Izzy Wrenwood, and I was done playing their game. The hotel room was a tomb of silence, the rose-scented lotion on the nightstand clashing with the metallic tang of my own exhaustion. My phone buzzed relentlessly, Thane's pleas, Aurelia's accusations, but I let it hum unanswered, a distant drone against the storm in my mind. The wedding's chaos lingered. The band's abrupt exit, the bar's early closure, my Facebook post of the check sparking a firestorm online. I'd burned their fairy tale to the ground, but the ashes offered no peace. I felt hollow, unmoored, as if the woman who'd sat in that kitchen chair was a stranger. Seeking something, anything, to anchor me, I rummaged through my suitcase, my fingers brushing a faded red folder tucked in the lining, one I hadn't touched in years. It was Gideon's, my late husband's, a relic from the life he abandoned when he left me in Thane. Inside, beneath old insurance papers, was an envelope, yellowed at the edges, his slanted handwriting scrawled across it. "Izzy." My breath caught, a shiver running down my spine. Gideon had died a decade ago, his secrets buried with him, or so I thought. I slid my finger under the flap, the paper tearing with a soft rasp. The letter was dated 3 days before his death, each word a confession that shattered my world. "Izzy," he wrote, "I've carried a lie too heavy for the grave. Thane isn't yours. Not biologically. He was born to a woman I knew before you, a girl who left him at my door. She was 18, terrified, begged me to give him up. I couldn't. I told you he was ours, a mistake from before our marriage. You believed me. You raised him. You loved him like he was yours, and God help me, I let you." The room spun, the words blurring as my pulse roared in my ears. Thane, my boy, the one I'd rocked through night terrors, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college acceptance letter I'd framed, was not mine. Not by blood, not even by accident. Gideon had handed me a stranger's child, wrapped in a lie, and I'd built my life around him. Every sacrifice, every double shift, every dollar I didn't spend on myself had been for a boy who wasn't truly mine. The betrayal of the wedding, being shoved into that greasy kitchen while Aurelia smirked and Thane looked away, cut deeper now. I'd given everything to a son who let me be erased, and now I learned even the bond one thought we shared was a fiction. I didn't cry. My tears had dried up years ago, spent on late-night worries and Gideon's departure. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settle over me like frost on a winter morning. The letter trembled in my hands, but my heart was steady. I'd loved Thane fiercely, not because of blood, but because I chose to. Yet he'd chosen to let me sit in the shadows. The pain wasn't just the kitchen chair or Aurelia's mockery, it was the realization that I'd been a prop in their lives, even in Gideon's lie. I set the letter down, its truth a weight I'd carry, but not one that would break me. Not anymore. The weight of Gideon's letter lingered, its truth a cold stone in my chest, but I refused to let it anchor me. Thane's betrayal at the wedding, his silence as I sat in that greasy kitchen, had cracked something open, not to destroy me, but to let light in. I was done being the invisible mother, the wallet for their fairy tale. I wanted to feel alive again, to be seen. So I planned a dinner at my house, not for revenge, but for me. I invited the people who'd always seen me, Tate, my hospital colleague who'd slipped coffee into my locker during endless shifts, Clarence, my neighbor who shoveled my driveway before dawn, and Juniper Hale, the bookstore clerk who remembered my favorite authors. No obligations, just love. My home transformed that evening. The beige walls, once a museum of Thane's childhood, glowed under string lights I'd hung across the dining room. I spread a sunflower yellow tablecloth, its brightness a rebellion against the wedding's sterile elegance. The air filled with the scent of lemon butter pasta, roasted cherry tomatoes, and fresh basil I'd plucked from my garden. No frozen trays, no catered compromises, just food I'd made with my hands for people I chose. I played Stevie Nicks, her voice weaving through the room like a warm embrace, and lit a single candle, its flame dancing on mismatched plates. I wore a linen blouse, my graying hair loose, no makeup to hide behind. For the first time in years, I felt like Izzy Wrenwood, not just Thane's mother. Eloan arrived first, her laughter spilling in with a bottle of Merlot. Clarence followed, his stories of locking himself out in his slippers sparking chuckles. Juniper brought a dog-eared poetry book, reading a line that made us pause, hearts full. We sat around my table, once cluttered with Thane's homework, now alive with clinking forks and shared plates. No folding chairs, no swinging doors. Laughter bubbled as Eloan recounted a disastrous first date, and Clarence admitted to borrowing pens from the bank. I laughed too, a real laugh, one that crinkled my eyes and warmed my chest. The wedding's coldness, its chandeliers and mocking whispers, felt a world away. As we savored the last bites of cornbread, Eloan raised her glass. "To Izzy," she said, her voice steady, "who's done hiding in anyone's shadow." Glasses clinked, and I felt a rush of belonging. This was my family, chosen not by blood but by heart. Candle flickered, casting light on faces that saw me, not my sacrifices. I was no longer the woman in the kitchen. I was home, whole, and enough. The warmth of my dinner party lingered like a soft glow, the laughter of Eloan, Clarence, and Juniper still echoing in my home's walls. The sunflower yellow tablecloth, the candles flicker, the taste of lemon pasta, they'd reminded me who I was beyond Thane's mother. But the red folder, with Gideon's letter revealing Thane wasn't my biological son, sat open on my kitchen table, its truth a quiet thunder. I'd loved him fiercely, built my life around him, only to be cast aside in a greasy kitchen at his wedding. That wound, deepened by Gideon's lie, had hardened into resolve. I wasn't the woman who'd sat silently anymore. A week after the wedding, a knock came at noon, steady and insistent. Through the frosted glass of my front door, I saw Thane's silhouette slouched, not the radiant groom I'd last glimpsed. I opened the door, barefoot, my linen blouse loose, my face bare of makeup. He looked worn, dark circles under his eyes, a wrinkled flannel shirt, the glow of his wedding day gone. "Mom," he said, voice low, hesitant, "can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him into the living room where the mantel, once crowded with photos of his childhood, now stood empty. His eyes flicked to the bare spaces, a frown creasing his brow. "Where are the pictures?" he asked. I ignored the question. "Set," I said, my voice calm but unyielding, pointing to the armchair. He sank into it, running a hand through his hair, his shoulders tense. "I didn't come to fight," he started, eyes searching mine for a crack to slip through. "I don't understand what happened. The band, the bar, that post on Facebook, it's a mess. Everyone's talking." His words were a plea, but they carried no apology, only his discomfort. I stood, walked to the coffee table, and pulled out the red folder. From it, I drew Gideon's letter, its yellowed edges stark against the wood, and a box of receipts, every invoice from the wedding I'd funded. "Read this," I said, handing him the letter. His fingers hesitated, then took it, his face shifting from confusion to shock as he read. "You knew," he whispered, voice cracking. "That I'm not." "I know now," I said, cutting him off, my voice steady as steel. "You're not my biological son. Gideon lied, said you were ours, and I raised you. Every fever, every school play, every pair of sneakers, I chose you, Thane. I gave you my life. My words hung heavy, the air thick with them. And you let Aurelia shove me into a kitchen, let her mock me, use my money for her parties. You stood there, smiling while I was erased." His eyes dropped, his jaw tight, but I pressed on. "I'm not angry about your blood. I'm angry because you let me be nothing." He swallowed hard, voice barely audible. "I didn't think it'd hurt you. Aurelia said it was for the photos, the aesthetic." I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You didn't think," I said. "Exactly." I pushed the box of receipts toward him. "These are yours now, every dollar, every sacrifice you overlooked." He stared at them, unmoving, then looked up, eyes pleading. "Mom, I'm sorry." Too late. I walked to the door, opened it. "I was your world, Thane," I said, my voice soft but final. "Now I'm mine." He hesitated, searching for a softness I no longer had, then took the box and left. I closed the door, the click echoing like a full stop. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was mine, and so was I. The door clicked shut behind Thane, its sound a quiet echo of finality. My living room, once a shrine to his childhood, framed photos of his gap-toothed grin. His high school diploma now felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of memories I'd clung to. Gideon's letter, revealing Thane wasn't my biological son, lay on the kitchen table, its truth no longer a wound but a key. The wedding's betrayal, sitting in that greasy kitchen, mocked by Aurelia's bridesmaids, my sacrifices reduced to a Venmo note, had shattered me. But from those shards, I'd rebuilt something new. I wasn't Thane's backdrop anymore. I was Izzy Wrenwood, the main character in my own story, and for the first time in decades, that was enough. I stepped onto my porch, the morning air crisp, carrying the sweet scent of roses blooming wild in my garden. The sun spilled golden light across the petals, each one a burst of life I'd nurtured through seasons of neglect. My robe fluttered in the breeze, and I sipped black coffee from a chipped mug, its warmth grounding me. The neighbor's sprinkler ticked rhythmically, a soft counterpoint to the birdsong weaving through the trees. This was my world now, not a hospital's fluorescent hum, not a wedding's cold exclusion, but a quiet Sunday morning where I belonged to myself. I'd canceled the brunch flowers, the band, the bar, and watched Aurelia's fairy tale crumble. Posted that check on Facebook, letting the world see my sacrifice. I'd faced Thane with the truth of his origins and my pain, closing the door on the mother I'd been. Each act had carved space for this moment, standing here, free, at peace. My house, once a museum of Thane's milestones, felt alive again. I'd boxed the photos, not out of anger but to make room for me. The dent in the doorframe from Thane's childhood bike crash, the armchair where I'd read him bedtime stories, those marks remained, but they no longer defined me. I cooked for myself that evening, a simple dish of roasted asparagus and garlic-rubbed steak, savoring each bite at a table set for one. The radio played Norah Jones, her voice a velvet thread stitching the silence. I lit a candle not for show but because I liked how its glow danced on my walls. This was my story now, written in choices I made for myself. As I sat by the window, watching the roses sway, I thought about what this journey had taught me, lessons I'd carry forward and share with anyone who'd felt erased like I had. First, your worth isn't tied to what you give others. I'd poured my life into Thane, thinking my sacrifices made me essential, but they only saw the money, not the woman. Second, silence can be a trap or a weapon. I stayed quiet in that kitchen, but when I chose silence later, ignoring Thane's texts, letting the wedding unravel, it became my power. Third, choose who you call family. Eloan, Clarence, Juniper, they weren't bound by blood, but their laughter at my table filled me more than Thane's indifference ever could. Fourth, truth, even when it hurts, sets you free. Gideon's letter broke my heart, but it also broke the chains of a lie I'd lived for decades. Finally, you are enough just as you are. I'd spent years as Thane's mother, forgetting Izzy Wrenwood, the woman who loved roses, jazz, and the feel of linen against her skin. Rediscovering her was my greatest victory. I didn't check my phone anymore, didn't scroll through the comments on my Facebook post, though I knew they'd grown, friends, strangers, even a nurse from my old hospital shift, all resonating with my story. Thane never called again, and I didn't need him to. Aurelia's texts, once sharp with blame, had stopped too. Let them spin their narrative in group chats, let Marigold clutch her pearls. I was done explaining. My garden, my porch, my quiet mornings, they were my truth now. I walked to the edge of the lawn, my bare feet sinking into the cool grass. The roses, vibrant against the green, seemed to nod in approval. I planted them 2 summers ago, a whim I'd almost forgotten, but they'd thrived despite my neglect. Like me. I thought of the women out there, the ones who'd sat in their own kitchens, their own shadows, giving everything to those who didn't see them. I wanted to tell them, you don't have to stay there. You can stand up, walk out, choose yourself. I did. That night, I wrote a single line in a journal I'd started, a habit born from this new chapter. Today, I am enough. I closed the book, turned off the light, and slept soundly, the roses outside my window blooming as fiercely as my heart. I was no longer the woman who paid for someone else's fairy tale. I was Izzy Wrenwood, the author of my own. If Izzy's story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt unseen or pushed to the sidelines despite giving your all, I invite you to join this journey. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories of resilience, of women like Izzy who reclaim their voices and rewrite their own endings. Your support means the world. It keeps these truths alive, shared from one heart to another. Drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching from and what part of Izzy's story hit home? Let's build a community where no one sits in the shadows. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep the light shining together.